All right. So like I said, I'll go through chapter 1 really quickly. And what we're going to be talking about is picking your UX projects, tools that you're going to be using, and the conceptual design of the portfolio website. So what you're gonna do is, if you have an existing portfolio, what you want to do is go through this as a reflective exercise and give yourself a couple of hours to put your portfolio together after completing both the chapters. If you were starting fresh, give yourself at least 10 days to put it together. Um, this is considering you already have projects to add to your portfolio. If you don't, you want to account for a few more days. So let's talk about picking your UX projects. So you can showcase all kinds of design work or non-design UX projects need to be front and center. So make sure that I'm just gonna quickly go ahead and mute you unless you have a question, Karthik. Do you guys have a question? I think both Dinesh and Karthik. Okay, I guess not. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute you. All right. So, like I was saying, you can showcase all kinds of work on your portfolio, but you want to put your UX projects front and center. So, ideally, we're looking at 3 projects, and the way that breaks down is you want to have 1 to 2 major projects end to end from start to finish. Ideally, 1 detailed project is good. So even if you have 2 major projects end to end that showcase the same skills, it isn't as effective as you think. You're just taking up more of the reviewer's time. So you want to keep that in mind as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Then you want to add 2 to 3 minor projects that show a variety of your skill set as a designer, and you want to showcase it clearly. So the hiring team is looking to make a quick decision on whether or not they should reach out to you after looking through your portfolio. So you want to aim to clearly communicate your value to the team. That's really what you're looking at. So the earlier you are in your journey, the more you'll have to iterate on your portfolio. So if this is your first iteration of your portfolio, just base your decisions on your immediate goal and don't stress about picking the perfect projects or picking the perfect tools. And it would also help if you could pick projects that represent the kinds of products you want to work on and are in line with the products being developed by companies you want to aim for. So keep those 2 in mind. You want to be clear about the 2 of them. If you don't have projects to showcase, pick one from a generator. I'll list a few for you to use. So I know it says that there, but we'll talk about them at the end um, of this presentation. If you do want to talk about picking projects, we can get back to that. Feel free to do your own research as well, or you could pick a website or a product and redesign it. I've seen people do Google Maps. I've seen people do Google Pay, and that's fine. Um, that's also a lot tougher because your target audience is very vast. But you want to, again, just showcase your design process. That's what you're trying to do here. Then when it comes to industries that you want to aim for or companies that you want to aim for, you could think of edtech, fintech, and e-commerce. Those are trending right now. But you don't have to stick to just these. You could also aim at different industries and have a mix of projects. So again, just show your clear design decision-making process. How did you get from your problem statement to the end, and how does it look now, and why does it look like that? So we'll talk a little bit about tools. like I said, I know you guys are already exposed to design, so you already know of Figma, of course. When it comes to platforms, there's Adobe Portfolio, that's freemium. There's website builders like Wix, Weebly, Squarespace that are also freemium. So you want to keep in mind how long you want it to be up there. I still have my portfolios from 2016, so I went for a website builder and I went for an account, or I bought space online to host it. So this is, again, it's pretty cheap to host a portfolio because there's nothing actionable from there um, in terms of purchasing, right? So you just want to be mindful that you want it to be easy for them, the reviewers, to reach back to you. So that's also something you want to keep in mind when you're picking your platform. What I'm seeing a lot of while I'm hiring right now and I'm mentoring right now is Notion, and that works just fine as well. Um, I know a lot of people have used Behance and Dribble in the past, and that also works, but I think that's a great supplement to your work or to your portfolio. Ideally, it's strongest if you have a portfolio website and it's easy for them to contact. That's really what you're going for, and that's what you should base your decision on when it comes to tools. So, conceptual design. So now that you know what projects go in and the tools that you're going to use, you can start to structure your portfolio website. So I like to tell people to think of this as a UX exercise in itself. And you want to keep in mind that this is going to be perused by people who don't know you and they don't know your work. So you want to lay it out in a way that's easy for them to go through. So I generally tell people to lay out the information architecture before they start on the website itself. So that concludes chapter 1. So we're going to take a little bit longer on chapter 2 because I think this is what really brings out your worth and your value as a designer. So essentially, a portfolio has these 3 sections. I'm sure that a lot of you have gone through sample work, sample portfolios. You guys know of other designers and you've gone through their portfolios. So you've seen these sections already, right? And a bonus that you could do is, of course, blogs and publishings or anything else that shows who you are. You want to try to be unique and you want to stand out because these sections up here are already on a bunch of portfolios. So this is where you want to stand out. So I'll give you an example. A mentee of mine posted a YouTube video of him doing an extracurricular activity that had absolutely nothing to do with design. But it showcased that he was clearly a fun person and I wanted him on my team. So that's something that you could think of is how do you showcase who you are beyond your design work as well. And that's more of a cherry on top of the cake. So you want to first get your projects right. So your entire portfolio is aimed at showing your skills in strategizing, UX research, wireframes, visuals, mockups, and deck handoff. And you'll notice that it is in the same order as the design process. So you do want to show at each stage how you are a valuable asset and how you've, in the strategize stage, how did you understand the problem? You want to elaborate on that. You want to show that it was really unclear in the beginning, but then we dug deeper and we realized that this is the real problem that we're trying to solve. So you want to showcase how you even got to the problem statement, especially with your major project. Then you want to show how you were able to take the problem statement and from there figure out What is the best research method? So you want to talk about it, and we'll get to how to lay out your captions, if I may, because essentially it's going to be more visual, and that's what you're aiming at. So ideally, you want to have an image or a visual that shows what stage and how you understood it and how you executed the stage, right? When it comes to wireframes, you want to show your understanding of UI patterns, of the tools that you use. So this is where you showcase your brilliant Figma animations, or whatever it is that you guys do best on Figma or any other tool that you use. This is where you showcase it. And then you move on to your visual design. So if you want to talk about whether or not you were handed the branding guidelines, if you had to come up with them, how did you come up with them? So you want to be as elaborate as possible and showcase exactly how you got to your final screens, right? A bonus on here is collaboration and how you did dev handoff. So that is something that may or may not have a visual, that's fine, but a lot of hiring managers want to know that you are able to talk to the dev team. So that's also something that you want to talk about, is if you have experiences talking to a developer, if you have developing experiences, that's also great. But it just shows that you know what it's like to either be a developer receiving handoff, or you know what it means to sit down with the dev team and go through each screen, because it is almost like a language barrier, and your manager wants to know that they can trust you with that stage of the entire design process as well. Let's talk about your major project. So what you want to do is show it end to end. You want to cover all the processes and steps. You want to make it a story about how you took part in the design process, right? Because most of the times, and this is if you've already worked, it's a whole team effort. So you want to highlight your part as a designer. You want to make sure that it's easy to follow, so you could add pagination or steps, and you want to show every step. But what you don't want to do is dwell on the design process model. I've seen a lot of people do this. The model that you're using, whether it's Stanford Design School, whether it's IBM's design process, whatever it is, you don't have to talk about it, because your hiring team already knows the process. Your design manager knows it, so you want to skip the theory. And if you'd really like to, for example, I have my own design process, and it is a section by itself on my portfolio. It isn't something that I highlight when people have to go through projects. So your minor projects. Now, your minor projects, they don't necessarily have to be smaller or shorter projects. It could just be sections of a big project. So in your previous project, your major project that you covered, it already reflects your thought process and shows your soft skills as well. But here you want to talk about other soft skills or other ways that you contributed to the projects that you worked on, right? So for example, how did it make a difference in the outcome of the product features or experience? How did you do that, right? So for example, for me, I worked on a huge flow for T-Mobile's e-commerce experience for their business flow, right? So I couldn't possibly fit that into my portfolio. What I did was I took sections of it and I said, this is how I increased sales by adding a chat feature at this stage. And this is how I identified that we needed a chat feature at this stage, right? In another project, again, it was huge, but I talked about a section of it where I reduced the generation of support tickets by removing the phone numbers and adding an FAQ section. So that's something that you want to highlight here. Again, you do want to make it a story. You do want to show the design process of how you identified the problem, how you solved it. But at this point, they've already gone through your major project. They know that you're able to go through the design process. So right now you're showing how you met business goals, right? So that's essentially what you're doing with your other projects that aren't end-to-end. So let's talk a little bit about your mindset before going in to build your portfolio. What you want to remember is, again, treat this as a UX project by itself. You want to be clear about what you're aiming for. So this is what one of my mentees thought process looked like. She went ahead and she documented it. She went, okay, well, this is the industry I'm aiming for. She was going for e-commerce. She picked a major project that was outside of the industry, and her minor projects were both e-commerce. On one of the projects, she showed more research and a bunch of screens that showcased her research and her process. And on another one, she showed how she was able to conduct tests and analyze those tests. So she showcased different skills within the same industry, and she was able to show it with proof, and those are the screens. So I know you see that it says spend 10 to 15 minutes on this. I'll leave it to you guys. If you really do want to, you can go ahead and use Miro or FigJam. And first be clear on the industries or companies that you're going for, and then talk about, and then break down what you want to put on there to showcase your skills. Another thing you want to keep in mind is you want to think Twitter. That essentially means that you want to limit the characters for your description. So you want to focus on the visual aspect, as I said before, and let your screens and your work speak for itself. You want it to have just 2 to 3 sentences to give the reasoning behind your design decision. And that's basically, as it says, proof of concept. So you want to show how you came up with the concept with the proof. The third thing is you want to be industry specific. So like I said, be clear about whom you're aiming for. And if it isn't an industry, even if you know that I want to go in for a product company or I want to go in for an agency, that's also clarity. So be as clear as possible, because then you know your audience and it's easier to speak to them. The fourth thing is you want to make it easy for them to contact you. So include download links to your resume or CV and make your email and phone number clickable. So you want to be mindful about also where they're going to be opening it. They're going to be at work. It could be that first it goes through a hiring team and then it goes to the design team. So you want to keep that in mind as well. So you want to make it easy for them to circulate internally. Or you want it to be easy for them to also just open it on their phone and call you. Because really what they're doing with the portfolio is deciding whether or not they want to meet with you. So that takes us to the final steps that you really want to remember is who's going to see your work. So the first thing is, like I said, it would be going either from hiring to design, or if it's a smaller team, it's just going to be design. But either way, if you followed everything that we've discussed, you will have the keywords on your portfolio. And I say that because sometimes they run it, if it's a big company, they run it through the CV, and the resume gets run through a program that will pick keywords, and then you're showcased to the next step, or then you're pushed to the next step. You want to remember that they don't have too much time to make their decision. Sometimes they bring in senior designers to join them in the vetting process. So if I'm a design manager, I have put forward a couple of portfolios that I shortlisted, and I just take it to my team and I go, hey, this is a bunch of people who have applied. Who would you like to work with? Sometimes that happens. It may or may not happen, which is, again, very important for you to be cognizant of where you're applying, who you're applying to. Is it a big company? Is it a small company? So they may decide to contact you after going through one or two projects. It could be after one project. If it's a really strong one, they could go ahead and contact you, especially smaller teams. With bigger teams, they go through the entire portfolio and they take a look at who you are. They go through your socials. They try to figure out who you are as a person, try to see if you're going to be a good match. If they can, sometimes, again, I don't mean to overwhelm you, but bigger companies do background checks as well. Just remember that you will also get a chance to talk more about your projects in the interviews. So keep it concise again. So yeah, that's short and sweet. And I'm going to be taking questions from you now. So I'll go ahead and hit record.